ICO is the type of game that you don't get every day. The fact that I've been searching, for years at this point, for a piece of media that can provide or emulate the feeling that I get from playing through ICO again, a game that is at this point over 2 decades old and have never been able to, should be a testament to the timeless beauty that Ueda created all those years ago. It's hard to really talk about ICO because I think it's one of those things that you can't really connect with without experiencing the game for yourself. I don't mean to say this in a gatekeeping way or anything, but it's kind of just a symptom of how the game was designed. In a 2005 interview, Ueda stated that he wanted to create a brand new kind of game, something unlike existing games, a feat that he certainly achieved, and to this day there really is nothing like ICO. The game's art direction is characterized by its use of a muted color palette, simple geometric shapes, and natural environments. The colour palette of the game is predominantly earthy tones such as browns and greens, which gives the game a natural and organic feel. The simple geometric shapes, such as the rectangular walls and circular platforms, lend themselves to a minimalist aesthetic that emphasises the main priority, the emotional core of the game's story and characters. One of the most striking features of ICO's art direction is the way that it conveys a sense of scale and grandeur. The game's environments are vast and open, with towering structures and sprawling landscapes that create a sense of awe and wonder. The player character, ICO, is small in comparison to these environments, which adds to the sense of vulnerability and isolation that permeates the game. The game's use of light and shadow is a notable aspect of its art direction. The game's lighting is dynamic, which creates a sense of realism and immersion. The use of shadow is also significant, as it is used to create a sense of mystery and tension, the game's shadowy environments feeling sinister and unnerving. The game's art direction, with its muted colour palette, simple geometric shapes, and natural environments, creates an uncanny atmosphere that can feel both familiar and unfamiliar at the same time. ICO's use of light and shadow also contributes to this feeling, emitting a sense of mystery and unease. The sense of danger can be heightened by the game's minimalist design, as there are often no visible safety rails or other safety features to protect the player character. The game's story is deliberately vague and open to interpretation. This can create a sense of confusion and uncertainty, adding to the unsettling and uncanny environments, as players are left to piece together the events of the game and the motivations of the characters. Immediately thrust into this lonely, oppressive world, ICO is a young Horn boy, taken against his will to be sacrificed along with the rest of the Horn children who have been taken prior, as evidenced by the coffins being all that reside within this desolate room. As many games will start you off with a sense of freedom, laying out the opportunities and vast world ahead of you, ICO does not. You are alone in a cold, dark castle. And this is true for, practically the entire game. Upon rescuing a girl trapped in a cage, resembling that of a caged bird, a motif that will be prevalent throughout the story, ICO and Yorda vow to escape the castle together. The contrast of their designs speak to the strength of ICO's art direction. ICO, a young, determined boy, dressed in bold reds and saturated colours, the horns on his head being indicative of a somewhat brash personality, all of which reflect his bravery and willingness to leap into action to protect Yorda. Yorda, however, is tall, elegant, dressed in pure white, complemented by greys and browns, almost moth-like, emanating a slight warmth yet ethereal angelic aura. Put simply, from a visual perspective, these two are directly oppositional to one another. Yet, as I'm sure you already know, the dynamic of ICO and Yorda is not one of opposition or hostility. The game's enemies, known as shadows, are unsettling in their appearance and behaviour. They are often shrouded in darkness, and their movements are jerky and unpredictable, which can create a sense of tension and fear in the player. However, what some may not realise until a good while into the game is that the shadows aren't interested in you at all, only Yorda. Now, you could just leave Yorda to get captured and go on alone. After all, you wouldn't have to be stopped by the shadows every corner, and have to keep battling these weird entities constantly. But the thing is, you need Yorda. Not just ICO, but you, the player, needs Yorda in order to progress through the castle. Her magic allows for doors to be opened so that you can continue through your journey. ICO quite literally cannot make it out alone. But to add to this, would you really feel content with that, leaving Yorda, this helpless girl, to be taken back in the cage you found her in? Were you not in her exact same position, had it not been for a stroke of luck allowing you to escape? You, more than likely, have forged a genuine connection with Yorda. But how is this possible when all she really is a carefully constructed sequence of ones and O's, an NPC? who can't even speak your language. The game establishes the mechanic of being able to hold Yorda's hand. A small addition in theory, but there's so much more to it than that. You see, ICO, and in fact all of the games from the studio itself, has its own languages, only adding to the mystique and allure of the game's world. Kei Kuwabara, a member of Team ICO, came up with the idea that the runic language of Yorda, the subtitles of which depict a hieroglyph-like writing system that actually can be translated if you feel so inclined. ICO does not speak her language though. The two are separated by a language barrier, languages that don't even exist in our own world, yet it adds such a visceral and real feeling to everything. Now, because the two cannot communicate in a traditional manner, ICO and Yorda must use very simple sounds to convey feeling and thought, as well as using physical means to do so. This is where hand-holding comes into play. In order to guide Yorda through the castle, for her to keep up with you, you need to hold on to her hand. A simple enough gesture, but it really is so much more than that. These two lonely souls, outcast and alone, are able to find each other and forge such a close and intimate bond with one another. I think that's the key word here, intimacy. ICO is a game that thrives in the melancholy and quiet of its environment, a game dominated by long periods of silence, save for the constant ambience of the wind howling through the castle. So these moments, these small, close, very real moments, they're so significant because of the general lack of bombast that permeates the rest of the game, and so the relationship of ICO and Yorda becomes the driving force of the game, both in its narrative and in its gameplay. ICO as a game, I strongly believe, does everything it needs to in order to succeed what it set out to do. Had it been bloated with more content, added more dialogue, been more blatant in its narrative, I truly can't imagine that the end product would have surpassed what we got. It is, at its heart, a very simple game, yet its ambiguity leads to it feeling like a far more complex product than Ueda perhaps intended. It is as simple or as multifaceted as you wish it to be, and nowhere showcases this better than its iconic, beautiful, and cryptic ending. In the game's conclusion, ICO and Yorda manage to overcome various obstacles and adversaries together. As they make their way to the castle's upper levels, they confront the Queen, who has been in pursuit of you the whole game, though not for ICO himself, but for Yorda. The Queen is Yorda's mother, who refuses to let her leave the castle. Is the caged bird metaphor making more sense now? Yeah. She is also the source of the castle's curse, and intends to use Yorda's power to extend her own life. Essentially, their dynamic is one of an abusive parent and her child, and just before the final act, the two of you reach the gates of the castle, the objective that you have been working towards this entire time. And as you dart along the bridge that connects you to the rest of the world, to freedom, you start to notice Yorda's power weakening as she begins to stumble and fall, eventually too weak to move. The bridge separates, and the two of you slip away from each other. In a desperate attempt to rescue Yorda, ICO, the player, charges forward, knowing full well that the jump isn't feasible. You know this to your very essence, but it doesn't matter. This scene certifies the visceral, instinctual bond that ties Yorda and the player themselves together, but you are unable to prevent her from being pulled away. And then you see her. Towering over Yorda, who has now been reduced to a hollow shell, the Queen stands as a paragon for the power, oppression, and abuse that such a dynamic encompasses. You have lost Yorda. You have lost everything. You are free, but you have nothing. You have nothing. The capture of Yorda and ICO's fall propel the story forward, driving ICO's determination to overcome the challenges ahead and ultimately rescue Yorda from the Queen's grasp. You work your way through the inner workings of the castle alone now, isolated and without your partner. It's here where the lack of Yorda truly highlights the bond that you two have developed throughout the game, and now you're going beyond rationale for even the slightest chance of getting her back. As you progress, you find yourself in the same room that you started at so long ago. Shadows start to manifest, but this time it's different. They take on a form reminiscent of, almost identical, to ICO's, and this confirms it. There is no denying now that these are the other horned boys who were sacrificed to the Queen prior to your arrival. Now you face the ghosts of the past, children, not unlike you, who met a terrible end. But they do not attack. Instead, they rigidly shake and twitch, but do not come at you with hostility or aggression. When struck, they disappear, perhaps finally putting their souls to rest. Maybe. It's hard to tell whether they are acting of their own accord or have autonomy, or whether they are truly against you. But one thing's for sure, to get to Yorda, you must eliminate them. There's a truly unsettling sadness to this scene. It's unnerving and, frankly, a little disturbing. I've never truly experienced anything like this, and it's never overstated or made so blatant. Nothing in ICO ever is. Once you vanquish these tortured souls, the promised time comes. You confront the Queen in a genuinely imposing fashion. Her dark, jagged shadows jutting out and twitching in a disconcerting manner, contrasting her pale skin, as though she herself has become corrupted and unrecognizable. During the final battle, ICO must protect himself and Yorda from her attacks, and destroy the Queen's physical form. ICO loses both of his horns, the horned imagery that made him someone to be sacrificed, now being rid of. It's the first time a fight in this game truly feels like a battle, and the first time an enemy has tried to fight ICO directly. But you're no longer afraid. After a challenging confrontation, ICO succeeds in defeating the Queen, plunging his blade into her chest. The castle begins to fall. In the game's closing scenes, Yorda rises again, this time in a dark silhouetted form. It's possible this subtly hints towards the possibility of Yorda too becoming the next Dark Queen, but of course, who can tell? In an attempt to escape the collapsing castle, Yorda carries ICO through the crumbling environment. The juxtaposition between the start of the game to this point is staggering. Now, Yorda elegantly walks through the castle, holding you as you once guided and held onto her. Despite the environment, the two ultimately manage to escape the castle's destruction. We see as ICO drifts away, free from the castle. It's finally over. Kinda. In the final scene of the game, we find ourselves on a tranquil, empty beach. The beach stretches out for a long time, a ribbon of sand kissed by the gentle caress of the waves, as if nature itself is offering a gentle embrace to the weary traveller. The air is filled with a sense of calm and serenity. The scene is quiet and meditative, with the only sound being that of the crashing waves. And at the very edge, we see Yorda. The ending of ICO is somewhat open to interpretation, but it only further accentuates the game's unique visual style, minimalist storytelling, and emotional atmosphere that have made its ending so memorable for so many people. It's simply beautiful, cathartic, dark, melancholy, reflective, and a true testament to Ueda's knack for making you just care about these people. There is not a single thing I would change about this ending. Nothing. And frankly, I could say this about the whole game. ICO is a true masterclass of everything it sets out to do, and has influenced me in so many ways. The art I make, the stories I try to tell, and the many, many visions I hope to see to fruition someday. The liminality of ICO appeals to all of my senses, and if I may get very personal for a moment, even to the extent of affecting the way that I've come to view the fluidity of my own identity. The more I look into myself, the more of this game that I can see, and as I grow and change, I'm sure that I will continue to take this game with me. It truly is one of the most special things that I have ever had the pleasure of experiencing. Thank you for listening to my love letter to ICO.